Supporters of the Obama administration, including Hillary Clinton, are defending the exchange as one of the hard choices in government. Hard Choices, of course, is the title of her forthcoming book, but members of Congress complain they were not notified of the swap beforehand, and there are deep questions about whether these militants will pose a renewed threat to American. Mike Rogers, I'll start with you. First of all, the president spoke about this in Poland. He spoke about this over the past few days alongside Bergdahl's parents, and there is the argument that you bring every man home. As this war is winding down. Did we do the right thing in terms of bringing Bowe Bergdahl home?
Well, bringing Sergeant Bergdahl home is one thing, and we're certainly happy for the right family. Not in this case, no, absolutely not. The methodology is important here, and this is an interesting. I almost wish the administration would just stop talking about it and come up and meet their members of Congress and introduce themselves to these national security committees who do this work every single day. That would be a good start. Let me tell you why. Back in 2011, the administration did come, as according to the law, and had a discussion with a bipartisan meeting with all of the National Security Committee chairs and ranking members, both the House and the Senate, and in a bipartisan way, people said, this is not a great idea. That's the last time we really heard from the administration. Okay,
a question for you, and then I'm going to take it to the table. You guys get ready with questions. If it were you, given what you know now, would you have brought him home? If you had this choice?
Not under these circumstances.
You would not have brought Bowe Bergdahl home.
No, and again, he was not a prisoner of war. He was with the Haqqani Network, which is a terrorist organization. Not under these circumstances.
You would have left him there.
Under the way we've done, I would have continued to pursue his release. I would have continued to pursue his release, not under these circumstances. I wouldn't have given the Taliban 5, which 4 are serious commanders likely to return to the battlefield, according to intelligence assessments, when we have soldiers on the field for another 12 months. That means that those individuals are likely to re-engage in combat operations against U.S. soldiers the last 12 months that the president said they're going to be there. I think that's unconscionable.
Okay, who wants in? Jeremy, take it.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder that, given the way that this has unfolded, you have members of Congress lining up predictably on both sides of the aisle, with Democrats saying that they believe the president was justified in doing what he did in bringing Sergeant Bergdahl home. You have Republicans saying this is everything that they always feared about President Obama's foreign policy, that it's feckless, and that in the worst case, he is too soft on people who wish to do America harm. But isn't this really just an example of both Republicans and Democrats not being fully honest with one another about criticizing the president's foreign policy?
No, I completely disagree. Matter of fact, my ranking member has also made a statement that he doesn't agree with this. I've had other Democrats tell me they don't agree with this. Remember, the bipartisan group that met on this in 2011 in a bipartisan way, and I was in the meeting, said this is a terrible idea. Now, at that time, they were trying to release prisoners as a goodwill gesture to start peace talks with the Taliban. Universal in that room was, this is really not a great idea. Leon Panetta, Democrat, said bad idea at the time. So there's been, I think this is a bipartisan opposition. This, to me, is just about the policy of what happened. Diplomats are very concerned, and I'm hearing from 2 groups that are really worried about this decision. Diplomats and their family, they think that there's a price put on their head, and same with soldiers who are standing in the field and their family think that there was a price put on their head. That's not a partisan issue.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I want to go back to 2011. So you have the president's team meeting with the intelligence leadership and about the idea of doing something like this. Take us through the process currently. Were you or any of the leaders informed a week ago, 10 days ago, in any way that this effort was being undertaken by the administration?
The last we heard, as members of Congress who would be in the chain for notification, was the proof of life video that was delivered last December. And here's what's concerning to me. So we started a review yesterday to try to figure out, all right, what happened here? Was there a violation? Was there not? And disagreeing with the decision and having a violation, I agree, are 2 very different things. So I disagree with the decision. Now we need to determine, have they violated the law in this case? At least their public rhetoric does not match the facts on the ground. This notion that it was an acute health care, yesterday we were informed it wasn't acute. They had no information that it was acute. I don't know why you'd say that. They said we had to work within a few days of notice. We understand that this happened weeks ago, this started. And so everything that they're saying, I don't know if they understand that, but there are really very clear fact trails here. And those fact trails will come out in the course of time. That's why I wish they'd come up and talk to us versus try to have these conversations through the press, which is why they're coming to bad decisions, I think.
When exactly did you find out about this?
We were notified. I think the event happened 10:30 on a Saturday morning. I think we got the call probably late that afternoon on a Saturday.
So after it happened?
Yeah.
There was nothing beforehand at all?
No, nothing.
Okay, so what do you think, given what can we know? What can we even imagine that we might know about how these 5 detainees are being handled, or these now freed detainees, that might make us feel better about the questions that are hanging over this? Well,
and here's the other problem. This is why you want, when the administration asks the administration if the administration doesn't have to come to Congress and follow the law, I guarantee you what the administration's conclusion is going to be, right? And it's not just because members of Congress are stomping their feet and saying, well, nobody told us. That's just not what's happening here. There are legal requirements. And there's a lot of expertise sitting around those tables who have been through a lot of these discussions in private. And up to that point, matter of fact, I had been in every conversation on the notion that we might swap prisoners or engage in a peace talk. And there's some good dialogue in there, candidly. But here's the problem, that without that continual dialogue, we would know that there was a problem in Qatar before.
Yeah,
we sent somebody, he didn't live up to their obligation, they ended up arresting him in Great Britain.
Okay, but I'm asking exactly how you think these detainees might be handled in a way that might give us some comfort. Hold that thought for a second, because the president's in Warsaw, and he was asked about the issue of notification, whether or not he should have consulted Congress and how that came to pass. And here's the president's response.
We have consulted with Congress for quite some time about the possibility that we might need to execute a prisoner exchange in order to recover Sergeant Bergdahl. We saw an opportunity. We were concerned about Sergeant Bergdahl's health. We had the cooperation of the Qataris to execute an exchange, and we seized that opportunity.
Mike Rogers, you're chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Did that happen?
Well, I guess you'd have to parse his words. I don't know what he means by consulted Congress for some time. In 2011, they did come up and present a plan that included a prisoner transfer that was, in a bipartisan way, pushed back. We hadn't heard anything since on any details of any
Nothing since 2011.
Nothing since 2011. Again, other than this proof of life video, they came up and briefed us on the proof of life video.
Did they brief you in context of the initial thing that they came to you about, which would be to try and make an exchange?
No, they did not. And we keep very detailed records on this stuff. So I don't know why they're going down this path. My argument, listen, and again, this isn't about did Congress get notified. There's a legal question here.
Lots of questions.
There's a broader question about, is this the right decision to take 4 criminals, one of which, by the way, is wanted by the United Nations for war crimes, and put them back out on the battlefield? In Qatar, here's the problem. 12 months they get to go back, number one. And number two, if they want to have discussions with Taliban officials in Qatar, they can do it.
Is there any question in your mind that these 5 will not, in some way, shape, or form, get back into the world of terrorism?
I believe that 3 of the 5 for sure, likely 4. And I think there's one possibility that might not happen.
Jeremy wants to jump in.
That's a good place to get to my question, which is that my understanding of how this would have worked is there would have been an intelligence assessment given just how dangerous these detainees were perceived to be. So the president would have had to review what the intelligence community had collected on these individuals and make a determination whether or not they still would pose a threat once released. Has the White House shared any of that information about just how dangerous they viewed these individuals to be with you? And if so, what have you gleaned from that?
Well, the last assessment was done last year. And that assessment hadn't changed since the first assessment back in 2011, which was not eligible for release on all 5. So the determination was made that none of these 5 should be released back in 2011. They updated that to some degree, more acuity into last year, so December timeframe. And they hadn't done an assessment update since then because in their minds they believe that nothing has changed, which meant as of the release, none of them should have been released according to the
Mr. Chairman, you and I have discussed this before, but elaborate a little bit on why you think this is different than the Israeli decision 3 years ago to actually exchange 1 prisoner for 1,027.
Yeah, and
many of whom were terrorists.
And I agree, and I disagreed with that decision even publicly back then. And this is a difference. We want to seem that both sides have uniforms, both sides play by the rules of law. That doesn't happen here. The Haqqani Network is a terrorist organization operating in the tribal areas of Pakistan. They're the ones that had custody of Bergdahl, not the Taliban, not the Qataris, and not the Afghans. And so you negotiated with a terrorist organization, which, by the way, hostilities have not stopped or ceased and will continue long after even 2016. And that's my concern. And you've put on the battlefield at a time. So imagine this. You announce, this is all working together against, I think, this policy decision. We announced that in 2016 we're leaving. We've seen through intelligence reports that the enemy is going to react to that, and they have, about their changing their tactics to get ready for a withdrawal. And now you've taken 5 very credible, now have this higher kind of stature in that part of the world, and put them out back on the battlefield within 12 months. And by the way, they get to talk to the Taliban for that 12 months while they're in Qatar. That's a problem to me.
There are a couple of different, first of all, there's disagreement probably between me and you on Gitmo. I'm with the president. I think it should be closed. He can't close it because of all the questions that you and I both know exist. And I feel like there may be something connected here because something has to be done. At some point, that whole initiative has to be wound down. You may disagree. Having said that, the president's thinking that way, and I wonder if it's connected. But the moral question here, and it's interesting, I'll put it definitely to our next panel as well. My dad's coming in. If all these stories surrounding Bowe Bergdahl turn out to be true, if he is a deserter, if those emails and all the stories from his comrades are true, should this have still been done?
Well, I would have disagreed with it even had he been captured off the battlefield.
Are these arguments even an issue? Yes, Michael? It's hard. I mean, nobody wants to answer this.
Yeah, no, it is hard. I mean, because you are talking about an American soldier. And I think that there is a way in which you can bring him home and then adjudicate what he did on the battlefield.
So we need to put
whether it's a court-martial or something else like that.
Exactly. We need to put that story into context. I don't think it's part of the
You're not going to leave him there that way. I think you bring him home and then adjudicate his behavior on the field.
Well, Congressman, what do you know? Is he a deserter?
Listen, I'm going to let Department of Defense, I think, go through their review and release that information. The questions that are being raised today were the same questions that were being raised in 2011, I can tell you that.
But is it a part of the decision-making process?
Well, there are other ways to get a prisoner out. And just because it happened under these circumstances at this time doesn't mean that maybe another month you couldn't have done it in another way, or 2 months in another way. Remember, we had some
That's really easy for us to say, Congressman.
Well, and I understand that. However, it's not just about one soldier. That's why, hard choices, there are hard choices.
Hard.
You have thousands of soldiers in the battle space today, and diplomats who now believe that they put their a price on their head for this exchange. Why? Because they're still fighting. And remember, these are the guys that have shot little girls who are trying to go to school. They've just poisoned something like 300 to 500 little girls for going to school. That's who we're dealing with. That's the Taliban. That's the kind of people we're trying to negotiate with. And that's what's so troubling. When we leave, the very women that we've asked to come out and participate in society are now at the hands of people who believe that women are like cattle.
Yeah.
And they're killing little girls for learning to read. So some notion that this is some noble exchange across the bridge with two law-abiding parties is wrong. And so when you negotiate with they don't read the same messages that maybe any of us sitting at this table. So yes, hard choices. I argue, was that one soldier's exchange worth the risk of what we put on all those soldiers? I think that's a problem.
All right, Congressman Mike Rogers, thank you very much.
Thank you.
More questions, actually. More questions keep coming. Still ahead.